Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Tuesday Swoop here on the Solano College Sports Network. It is the first one of the semester, and we have a good one for you, as it is week one in the NFL is in the books, and we're going to talk about it today. I'll be hosting today. My name is Blake Molina, Collin Samansky, a former, and some new guys joining us, Holden and Drew Kirby, joining us this semester and on the show. Guys, thank you, and welcome to your first show.
Yep, happy to be here.
So we're going to just kind of jump into it. We'll start, obviously, with the game that started the season, the Thursday night game, the 21-20 Detroit win over Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. No Travis Kelce in that game, but other than that, what are your guys' thoughts on that game? And I'll kick it to one of you guys to start.
I think the Lions, their defense played really well for especially taking advantage of locking down the Chiefs receivers. Mm-hmm. And the Chiefs, Kadarius Toney has to catch those footballs in those main situations. It was like a third, second and long, and he just drops it, goes right in his hands. And then the pick six goes right through his hands. Perfect ball on just a dragger out by Mahomes. Mm-hmm. And then the Lions on offense, Gibbs played really well, but I think they should give him the ball a little bit more. I know it's week one. They're probably getting him into the game a little bit more. But other than that, I thought it was a really well-rounded game by the Lions.
Yeah, the two-man game between Gibbs and then they signed David Montgomery in the offseason from the Bears for 3 years and about $15 million. I think that's a nice little tandem. I didn't really like it on paper, but after seeing that first game, I think that's a solid duo, especially with a rookie like Gibbs, like you mentioned. Didn't get as many carries, but I think those carries will go up. And then if Gibbs struggles a little bit, runs into that rookie wall like all rookies do, no matter your position, you have a veteran who's he's a good running back for sure in Montgomery, and he's going to be there for seasons on to help mentor Gibbs. So I do like that. Yeah. What about you, Drew? What do you think?
I think another underrated part about Montgomery's skill set is his pass blocking protection. Goff had a lot of time in the pocket, especially with Chris Jones out, and I think a big reason of that was because of Montgomery. So.
That's one guy.
I think that's why he played so much snaps.
Yeah, that's one guy we didn't talk about being out besides Travis Kelce is Chris Jones, who actually was there sitting in the press box watching a little. You don't usually see that when you're dealing with contracts. He did get a new contract signed for 1 year with some incentives. I believe it starts at 13 and can reach about 22 with those incentives. And I already know what you want to say, so go ahead. Yes. Take the floor.
Tony is my favorite Chiefs player right now, bro. I love that guy as a Las Vegas Raiders fan. But yeah, it was beautiful losing the Chiefs, watching the Chiefs lose. I got to give credit to the Lions, though. It wasn't just a Chiefs loss. That was a Lions win. And Dan Campbell was being very aggressive on that play calling. And especially with fake punt, second possession from your own 20. And against the Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champs in their house on banner night. You don't see that aggressiveness this early in the season. You'd see it later on, when you really need the win to make it to the playoffs, like they had the chance last year with the Packers until events outside of the game happened. But, that's just I like the aggressiveness from Dan Campbell, and honestly, I think he could be Coach of the Year.
Yeah, this is definitely a new look Lions team, and the culture has definitely changed, so we're going to see what they can do this season. We're going to go to our next game. Not the best game for multiple reasons, but it was the Bengals losing 24-3 to their rival, the Cleveland Browns. Mm-hmm. The kind of running joke, especially now after Sunday, is the Browns do own Joe Burrow. As we know, Joe Burrow is a young upcoming top quarterback. Just got a 5-year, $275 million extension, 220 of it guaranteed. So a lot of pressure, a lot of money, and he really just flatlined for not just regular stats for fantasy users. Myself, I have him. 3.25 fantasy points. For a quarterback, that is horrendous.
Horrible.
So I just will say, obviously it's a division game. Division games are tougher. Mm-hmm. The Browns' defense is up there for sure. I don't want to call it elite just yet, but it's there. Myles Garrett is elite, and I already have him as my defensive player of the year. But I just think the Bengals just kind of need to retool. And I'll open the floor for you guys. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I just think the Browns, they had won 5 of the last 6 meetings against the Bengals. It was raining. It was pouring down rain. Burrow had to wear a glove on his hand just to grip the ball. He missed a lot of throws to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins deep down the field. And I think overall it was just a well-balanced game by the Browns on the defensive side of the ball. And Nick Chubb averaged 6 yards a carry. He played a very well-balanced game. And Deshaun Watson, he played all right. He had that interception. And with the conditions, he played decent. I think it was a decent opener for him.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit of an overreaction, but I don't think it's crazy to say that the Browns have a top 5 roster in the league. I mean, their whole roster from the defensive line to the front four, the secondary, the middle linebackers, the receivers, their run game's great. I think this is their year to, make a deep playoff run.
Mhm.
So I have my eye on the Browns. I'm curious to see how they go.
When the Browns started to get a little bit better, I was always like skeptical. Like, what was the year they made the playoffs? Like, that was weird for me. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like
I
a
agree.
weird feeling in my
Yeah.
stomach. I'm like, this doesn't sit right. The Browns aren't supposed to be good. I'm not saying they're great, but they have earned the right to have a say in what goes in this division. Now, it'll be a tough division. I do think Cincinnati's still going to win the division. This doesn't cause concern. You don't need to press the panic button on Joe Burrow. He just had a slight injury in training camp. He didn't have many reps for training camp and practice. This is basically his preseason game, even though it's against a division opponent. But I don't think it calls for panic for the Bengals, but I do think it gives the Browns a little bit of like momentum going forward, and they can make this division very interesting.
Yeah, probably one of the more tougher divisions in football, though
Mhm.
we might see the decline of the Steelers this season. We'll
Yeah.
talk about them a little later. Jumping into our next game, kind of another spoiler. The Ravens and the Texans played each other. The Ravens did win 25-9, and when I mean spoilers, they spoiled C.J. Stroud's professional debut, the number 2 overall pick. Solid game, 242 yards, no picks. But I just think for the Texans, they're just still inexperienced, and they're a work in progress. So maybe not this year, or even next year, but 2 to 3, 3 to 5 years, we could be talking about them. And Stroud, I think he has the potential to break his ceiling and go higher.
Mhm.
I'm not saying he's going to be better than Bryce Young, but at the end of it all, I mean, we could be saying that, because they're kind of in that battle of who's going to be probably the better quarterback. We'll talk about Bryce Young a little more. On the Ravens side, though, Lamar struggled. J.K. Dobbins tore the Achilles. He is out for the season. That was the first Achilles injury. We'll get to the second one. I do want to shout out Zay Flowers, though, the rookie. I have a lot of hope for him. He had 9 receptions on 78 yards, 10 targets, too. So Lamar was definitely looking for him. Kind of thought maybe OBJ would kind of get his little revised role, and Lamar might be looking for him heavy. Didn't really look at him that much, but Zay Flowers is a good receiver piece, and he has, and I'm not saying he is him or saying he's going to be better, but he has Tyreek Hill-like skill sets. Like, he has that in him where he could be someone like that. He might not reach that potential of Tyreek Hill, but he's definitely got it in the short from the one game I've seen, and going forward, I liked him coming out of college. Collin, what can you say about this game?
There's not much for me to say. This was a lower register game on my list of Week 1 matchups, but you said it. The Baltimore Ravens didn't play. Lamar didn't have the greatest game, but they still got it done against a team they need to beat. Like, you had to beat the Houston Texans. They're one of the bottom teams in the league. There's a reason they were the second overall pick. D'Amico Ryan's taken over as head coach. I don't think he's going to have an immediate impact. I still see them going like maybe 5-6 wins top this year. I don't see them getting crazy amount of wins, but still, it's a strong win, and it's a welcome to the league moment for C.J. Stroud.
I agree.
It's building character for him and just realizing you're with the big dogs now.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this game. I will say, since Mark Andrews was out, I did think Zay Flowers did a great job stepping up, and I do think later on in that season, he could definitely break out this year for this Ravens team. And, the past couple of years, they've really needed just someone for Lamar to throw
I
the ball
agree,
to.
yeah.
And I'm really hoping Zay Flowers is that guy for them.
Real quick before I'll give it to Drew. I was always still kind of confused on why it was a money thing, but in general, why they wouldn't really work with Marquise Brown. I really thought, he wasn't a number one, and I get that. You needed to maybe bring someone in to pair with him, but I felt like the chemistry with him and Lamar was incredible. He looked like, there were times where Lamar was making him look like a number one. He truly wasn't, but he had flashes.
There was a solid connection between those two.
I agree.
Like you said, I think Lamar's connection with him and that chemistry they had is what got him the contract to go to Arizona. But still, we haven't seen. Again, Arizona's got a whole bunch of QB issues going on so far. But
Oh, they're a mess.
Yeah. I would like to flip it, though, to the Texans. The first half, they were playing some really good defense on the Ravens. It was a tight one-point game at halftime. And I think with D'Amico Ryans, the future of that defense is definitely on the uprise.
I
But in
agree.
the second half, I think the Ravens cooked up a game plan for her and got the job done. And I think Stroud, he played it all right. He had a 78 passer rating, decent completion percentage, but he did get sacked 5 times. So I think the offense will definitely have to work on that and improve. But
Yeah, I think the future is bright in Houston. It's just going to take some time. D'Amico Ryans, I think, was a great pickup for a coach. We're going to switch gears and go to another game. This one a little bit of a heartbreaker depending on what fan you are of their team, of these teams, excuse me. Buccaneers and the Vikings. Buccaneers ended up winning 20-17. I was at work, so I didn't get to watch this heartbreak. I am a Vikings fan. So my points, I just want to do a couple. I don't see too much with the Bucs. They're kind of in, for me, that team that they can show flashes, but I still think they're mediocre. Like, they're just there. They're either going to get you 8 wins, or they're only going to win like 4 or 5. Like, you really don't know. They could sneak into the playoffs. I'm not counting that out, but I'm not very high on them. But they did win. They did get the victory. Baker looked solid, not great, but definitely not worse or bad like we've seen him in the past. And Cousins played well too, threw for 340 and 2 touchdowns, and I think Justin Jefferson had one of the most quiet 150-yard games. I mean, nobody was talking about it. I don't blame them. They lost. I understand. You always want to talk about the winning team more, but I thought that was a quiet 150, even though he didn't score. And, I do want to give my flowers to the rookie out of USC, Jordan Addison. He looked good in his debut. And he's, I think, going to be a real nice complementary piece for Justin Jefferson going forward. 4 receptions, 61 yards, and he got a touchdown, had a little dance too. That kind of went viral. But I'll let you guys take over. What do you guys think about this game from both teams' perspectives?
I think I just want to give props to Baker Mayfield because I think towards the end of that game when it was super close, he was giving his all. That 3rd and short, and when he ran it, dove for the first down. I think Baker is definitely going to have a better season, one of his better seasons of his career so far. And then his connection to Mike Evans was pretty solid. Mike Evans had 6 receptions, 66 yards, 1 touchdown. And then the defense played a pretty decent game, especially in the ground game against the Vikings. Even though they don't have Dalvin Cook anymore, and they only have Madison, and I don't even know who their backup is, but
Ty Chandler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the Vikings, I think their offense is going to be fine this year. It was fine last year. It's going to be fine this year. What I'm worried about is their defense. They lost to Darius Smith, I believe, was it? And their defense was already cooked last year. So
I agree.
this year, I think it's going to be a mess out there on that defensive side. So I'm really worried for that.
The only thing I'll say about the defense, it is a worrisome part for the Vikings, but you couldn't have a better defensive coach, though, than Brian Flores. I thought just alone as a non-player acquisition, he was potentially the biggest acquisition for them. They did acquire some kind of staple guys in the offseason. Marcus Davenport was one. Byron Murphy Jr., who was a really solid corner, even though he got the stiff arm from Baker and a little chatter that went viral. But, some solid pieces, but I thought Brian Flores was really the big addition and the main reason to get the defense going, and hopefully gets better, but we'll see going forward.
And like you were saying with the Buccaneers, they'll get playoffs because of the division they're in. That's how the NFC South has been. It's a solid.
No, it's not solid.
I know that was a bad word. It's a league in the NFL. They can make the playoffs, but I see the Saints winning that. But I do think he surprised me. Baker Mayfield surprised me. I thought this would be a much easier win for Minnesota than I anticipated. My dad even he's in a Survivor League. He had it on Minnesota, and he's out week 1 because he wasn't expecting Tampa Bay to be good, especially with the absence of Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Tom Brady left. They aren't the team they were before. Their defense not quite as dominant as it was for the Super Bowl year. So they're a real question mark. And that whole division, I think, is a question mark. You could make a case for any one of those teams to make the playoffs and win their division, and they all would be solid statements, I think.
I agree with that, and that's actually a good lead-up point. You were talking about the Saints can win that division. I don't agree with that, but I do have the Saints as my number 2 team, and here's why. We're going to jump into the next matchup, which is the same division here. The Panthers and the Falcons met up in a kind of a – it was a weird game. I even put that in my notes. I capitalized it. It was a weird game. It really was. Falcons did win 24-10. Desmond Ridder, their quarterback, looked terrible, but their run game with Robinson and Algier was crazy. Two rushing touchdowns, one receiving touchdown that belonged to Bijan Robinson, and along with the 75 yards from Algier. I mean, that running back room is, for how young it is impressive. But I will say, even though the Panthers lost, I have them as my dark horse winning that division. I think they have a chance because I think Bryce Young just needs a little time. I give him a few weeks, and I think he's gonna figure it out. But they did struggle heavily in this one. The running back room kind of impressed me between Hubert and Miles Sanders, the recent addition in the offseason. They look solid. The wide receiver room is probably the biggest question mark on this roster. Adam Thielen, DJ Chark. They drafted Jonathan Mingo, who has a lot of potential, but nobody really showed up. The only receiver that showed up was their tight end, another addition, Hayden Hurst, who's kind of that security blanket for a rookie. But I do kind of have them sneaking in, maybe winning their division. I think the Saints, though, are the next best option. But I'll kick it to you guys. Drew, where do you want to start with this one?
Well, I want to start with that. I think the Falcons are actually going to win this division.
Really?
I think they have such a great run game. Excuse me.
Okay.
Their O line's great, and you pair that with Bijan. I think one of the better rushing games. And on their defense, I mean, their defensive line is not great, but their secondary is good enough to keep them decent at defense at best, maybe, and that's what I'm hoping for that team.
I liked the addition of Jesse Bates, the safety from Cincinnati. I think he's a stud, and him going over to Atlanta, I thought that was a huge pickup. And then kind of an under-the-radar one as a veteran pickup, Calais Campbell. And he can still play for his age, so those were some solid pickups. But what do you think about that game, Drew?
I think Bryce Young, I mean, it was his first game, but he went 20 for 38. I think towards the end of the game, that O-line was just not doing anything for him, and the receivers just weren't getting open. He had a lot of trouble in the pocket trying to just get to an open receiver. He had 2 interceptions. They were okay, and he got sacked twice, but he was pressured a lot more than the 2 sacks that it shows. But the running game was definitely a positive for the Panthers this game.
All right, going to the next game, for me, and I didn't even watch this game, but I tried watching the highlights, and it was it just wasn't entertaining. The Cardinals and Commanders, the Cardinals 16, the Commanders 20. I really didn't think anyone really shined in this game necessarily. James Conner was really the only offense for the Cardinals. He had 62 rushing yards. Marquise Brown, who we talked about a little earlier when discussing the Ravens, I mean, he was an unknown. I think he's just lost in Arizona and needs to get out of there to save his career, personally. And the Commanders, how it just kind of looks not ready / I'm ready, so we'll put them in the middle. The receiver room has injuries, but it has potential. Terry McLaurin, Dotson, Curtis Samuel is still there. So just kind of a weird game in general, but I'll leave it to you guys. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think the Commanders, they are potentially a playoff team. I really, truly believe that. It was a horrible week 1 against the Cardinals. But the only group that looked bad out there was, I would say, their O-line. Their O-line was horrible. And, for a football team to have a bad O-line, that's not great at all. But their defense, I know it was the Cardinals, but their defense was great. It was great last year. It's going to be even better this year. And I do think Howell could be decent for them. He had the great connection with Jahan Dotson in the preseason. And I think this year, Howell may potentially break out. So I'm a Howell believer,
I'm rooting for him, just a little too early because, he started mid-season, towards the end of last season, and now this is going to be his first full season. So I'm going to give him time, but, first game, a little rough.
This is only his second.
Yeah, it's only his second season, second regular season game because he was benched all of last year. So. I think he'll be a good, average starter for them.
Yeah,
and I think if that O-line, like you said, improves, his connection with Dotson and Terry McLaurin could definitely be good for that offense. And then Brian Robinson Jr. Running the ball paired with Antonio Gibson, I think if that O-line picks up on the run game as well, that offense could be a sleeper, maybe top 15, top 10 offense.
I just want to say I think Brian Robinson is probably one of the more underrated running backs. I'm not saying he's the most underrated, but he's definitely in that conversation. And when Gibson's healthy, he's shown flashes too where he can kind of be like that. So that's a big question mark kind of as well. Go ahead, Collin.
I gotta push back a little. I don't see the Commanders as a playoff team. Maybe they'd be third. They would be third in their division. and they could get playoffs that way. You see it happen all the time. But I don't know. The NFC's it's pretty top heavy, but they could sneak in as the 7th seed with the wild card. That's the only way I see them getting it. I don't see them winning the division at all with Philly and Dallas in there. Initially before Sunday night, I would have said Giants probably above them, but who knows with the Giants? It's only week 1.
Yeah.
So you can't make too many assumptions that you want to hold on to for the whole year. But it was a boring game. This one, I had no intention of watching this game with Arizona and Washington, with Dobbs for Arizona. They just picked up in the offseason. I don't know anything about this game going into it. I saw the only highlight I saw was a defensive touchdown, but other than that, it was a sleepy game for me.
I also want to say that I think Eric Bieniemy was one of the better acquisitions for this Commanders team.
Definitely.
Having him as offensive coordinator is going to help Howell unleash.
I think that's just a time thing where it's going to take some time, but I agree. I think that's a non-player acquisition. Like we talked about the Vikings with Brian Flores, that might even be a bigger pickup.
Yeah.
Only time will tell. The next game we're going to go into is a game I have actually quite a bit to talk about. Is the Jaguars and Colts game. The Jaguars did win 31-20. They spoiled the debut of Anthony Richardson out of Florida. He used to be known as AR-15. I was really high on him coming out of the draft. I think he has a lot of potential and he can be a really good quarterback. Colts team's a little shaky, but only time will tell. Him and Michael Pittman did develop some early chemistry, which was good.
Yeah.
But going to the Jaguar side of it, Trevor Lawrence has arrived, and it's time for him to show out. Calvin Ridley, getting him in last year's deadline was kind of a weird move because of the gambling, but he came out and has already showed, this guy's looking like an early wide receiver 1, and potentially going forward, Trevor Lawrence is number 1 guy. But Trevor Lawrence, he's arrived, and I give him the nickname the Golden Boy, and I think he's going to live up to that this year. But I'll leave it for you guys. Who would like to start on this one?
The Urban Meyer days are over with
Thank
Jacksonville.
God.
Lawrence, that was rookie year, right?
Yes.
Urban Meyer.
Yes.
Yeah. Poor guy.
I
Having to
agree.
deal with Urban Meyer. Those days are done. Trevor Lawrence so far has been turning around the Jacksonville franchise, and again, like I was saying with the Browns, it felt weird that they're in the playoffs. It felt weird last year when the Jaguars made the playoffs.
I agree.
It's just I'm not used to it, and it feels off, but it feels right at the same time because the South has been pretty. The AFC South has been a pretty open division, like the
It's a
NFC,
roller
like the
coaster.
NFC South. That's a division that any one of those teams could win. I think Jacksonville so far is starting to be the front runner for that division, and with Trevor Lawrence, I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I'm looking forward to the matchup with them in Kansas City in the rematch of the playoff match.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
Yes.
I think for Trevor Lawrence, having a receiver like Calvin Ridley is just so crucial. I think I saw somewhere that he put it on his own kids that he'd have 1,600 yards. So, you got to believe that if he's putting it on his kids.
Yeah.
And, by come playoff time, I don't think it's going to be crazy to say Trevor Lawrence is the second best QB in football.
Yeah.
I like that.
I do
the
think he
confidence.
could be an MVP candidate this year if the Jaguars continue to roll through the AFC.
He's my sleeper for him.
You
Yeah.
have to mention his name at least a little bit.
Yeah. But for the Colts, I think Anthony Richardson, out of all the rookie quarterbacks, I think he played the best week 1 for sure.
Definitely did. I think he has the chance to be the best so far. Just rookie year alone, he is in the better situation than some of the others, with C.J. Stroud and Young.
Yeah.
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young. Correct.
Yeah, he could be an offensive rookie of the year candidate, but I think that will most likely go to Bijan if the
Yeah,
if
no
the Falcons continue to run the ball like they did this past weekend. But Anthony Richardson overall had a good game. I'm hoping that injury doesn't do too much to him.
Yeah.
Hopefully he
Yeah,
doesn't
we'll
miss the
see.
game this weekend.
Yeah, it was a knee bruise. That's kind of hard to tell. I hope he'll be okay, but if not, don't want to risk the future. They're not, the Colts aren't expected to really do anything this year, so if you got to sit him a game or two, it really wouldn't kill you. They do have some decent backups. Gardner Minshew and Sam Ellinger, could hold it down for a week or two. After that, it's a little bit different. But conversation. Last thing on this game, and then we'll move on. I think for the Colts, too, just to have, in general, we don't know what they're going to be like with Richardson under center, the rookie. The Jonathan Taylor thing needs to end, though.
Yeah.
Whether you give him a new contract or trade him, you can't let that shadow cover your team. You
Yeah.
gotta get rid of that. Like you gotta figure that out. You don't have to get rid of him. I hope they don't, but you gotta figure that out. Whether you give him a new contract, give him a short deal, or just trade him. I mean, you gotta do something because that's gonna cause turmoil, and you don't want that, especially when you're trying to build up a young rookie quarterback.
Exactly.
I think if they get rid of him, they definitely need to pick up a new running back because their running game this past weekend was not doing too well.
Yeah, I think too they'll get some really solid compensation. You potentially could even get a low to high draft pick, first or second, and maybe you get a running back to throw
Yeah.
in type thing. You really never know. It just depends on who you trade with. I was looking more at Miami, kind of doing that
Yeah.
with their backs, maybe getting Jeff Wilson in return.
Or
Who knows?
Raheem Mostert possibly.
There you go, Raheem Mostert. We'll go to the next game. Probably I would say the most talked about game, the Niners-Steelers game. The Niners blew them out 30-7. I put in my notes blowout alert. Pickett didn't look great. I'm a big Pickett guy, so that was a little rough. But at the same time, I mean, he's taken on a top 2 defense. I mean, for me, I know it's only week 1 and the Cowboys did what they did, but I think it could go either way. Niners, Cowboys, who you want at the top. That's just your personal preference, and time will obviously tell. But, I mean, CMC looked good. He's continuing his thing. Ayuk coming out of that doghouse, snagging 2 touchdowns, having a big game. Debo went missing, but, hey, that's okay. Things happen. Kittle was solid as ever, and the defense held it down. Bosa coming back really kind of, they got rid of their drama. They're not dealing with any more Jonathan Taylor-like stuff now. They gave Bosa a new contract. So what do you guys want to talk about with this game?
I think just someone on the Niners defense that I think was really undershadowed this past weekend, Drake Jackson, had 3 sacks on Pickett, and he was a guy coming out of USC. I kind of liked him as a underdog, like sleeper pick for the Niners. I'm personally am a Niner fan, and I liked the pick when he was picked, and I think this year will definitely be his come-up year. So,
I mean, it hasn't been. What else am I gonna say? The Niners had a great defense. We knew that going in. They've continued to have a top defense year in and year out for as long as I can remember, and that's what wins it. Defense wins championships.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can say against it. You can easily make a claim that they make it. I don't want to say they win because that goes against everything I stand for, but I got to give it to them. I figured they'd win this game. I thought Pickett would put up a little bit better of a fight. I thought the Steelers' defense would also stand up to Purdy a little bit more, but I got to admit, Purdy looked pretty damn good. 2 touchdowns, 220, 0 interceptions. He was comfortable. He looked like he didn't have the injury at all last year. It's week 1 still, but I wouldn't be surprised if he moves forward and makes some noise for this offense.
I think the best thing about the Niners is that the Niners are just always on the same page. There's so much teams that they just look sloppy. Wrong plays. It's just always a mess. But the Niners, it's just they know what they're doing every single play, and it just works perfectly.
Yeah, I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it.
All right, we're going to go to now from a blowout to a really close game, a 1-point differential. The Titans did lose that game, but they only lost by 15 for the Titans. The Saints had 16. Tannehill did throw 3 picks and threw for under 200 yards. He looked really bad. I think they need to get rid of Tannehill sooner than later. They could be a team come trade deadline, depending on where they're at and where that division is because of the roller coaster it is. They could be in the market for a QB of some sort. Derek Carr looked good in his Saints debut, 305 yards. Michael Thomas kind of came out of his coffin that he's been in for 2 years with his injuries. He got about 65 yards. And then Chris Olave was the man of the day, though, for them, the young stud, 8 for 112. And I do think he has the potential to really, maybe not this year, but in a year or two, be a top receiver in this league. Like, we're going to talk about him in a top 5 conversation at some point.
Yeah, for the Titans, I think that D-Hop acquisition wasn't the best. Just because I don't see their championship window still there. I mean, Tannehill's horrible.
Yeah.
I think it should be Will Levis season, and I think they should just tank. And it's just such a they have a lot of pieces that they could trade to get start a great rebuild. And especially with a draft class like this year's, which is loaded, it's the perfect time to rebuild. So really hoping Titans.
yeah, they do have some young pieces as well, like Treylon Burks, and
Yeah.
I think Derrick Henry, he might still be kicking it, but the Saints played pretty good defense on him this past weekend. So
Yeah, quiet for Derrick Henry of only 63 yards on 15 carries. I mean, that's not the best. But it's against a tough Saints defense. They've had a pretty solid defense for the past few years, led by Cameron. And Derek Carr, I mean, it was a tough breakup with him and the Raiders. I got to admit, I am happy to see him doing well. Pretty good game, 23 for 33, 300 yards, and the touchdown. Did have the interception, but, I mean, solid start for Derek Carr. And him reuniting with Dennis Allen, again, former Raider head coach from Carr's rookie year. I do think the Saints can win the division. I don't think they'll go far in the playoffs. It really depends on who they're matching up with and how they pan out throughout the rest of the year. But I do think the Saints are my safe pick for the NFC South.
Yeah, and we're going to transition actually to the Raider game. They ended up winning 17-16 against the Broncos, a division matchup. I know you were happy. As a non-Raider Bronco fan, I would say not the most entertaining game, but hey, you know what? You win them however you do, and
A win is a win.
I think one of you guys said it when we were talking before. Russell looks like prime Russell from last. I think that was you, Holden, that said that about Russell. And I'm always a Russell guy, so I have high hopes for him. I thought the Sean Payton acquisition was good, but I don't think it had the same impact as like a Flores, a Bieniemy type thing. I don't know why. I just didn't feel the same, but I felt like at the same time, you're bringing in a coach. That's a guy you'd want to bring in. There's nothing wrong with Sean Payton. They just didn't look that great, though. Raiders, on the other hand, Jimmy only did throw for 200 yards, but he did have 2 touchdowns, and he threw him to his newest weapon, Jacoby Myers.
Yep.
He had 81 yards to go along with that. Adams was quiet, but still had 66 yards. And honestly, on both sides, neither running back, Josh Jacobs for the Raiders, Javonte Williams for the Broncos, really couldn't get it going. They just had kind of solid, decent performances. I think Jacobs rushed for about 60.
About 60,
Yeah.
It was a really gritty game to watch. I know in the second half it did start to drizzle a little bit. It doesn't sound like it was raining quite as much as you were mentioning for Cincinnati and the Browns. But it was a division matchup between the Raiders and Broncos. These have been a tough fight for the Raiders. Since moving to Las Vegas, the Denver Broncos have not yet to beat Las Vegas Raiders since they've moved, and I could not be happier. But Sean Payton, I did as a fan of the Raiders, I'm not happy with the acquisition for him by Denver. I did want Sean Payton more than Josh McDaniels, but Sean Payton showed the aggressiveness of his play calling and knowing the urgency to win a division game by starting out with an onside kick. Yeah. And the Broncos recovered, but with the penalty, it gave it back to the Raiders. They had short field and got the go-ahead touchdown early. I think that call could have been a no call for the early touching. It looked like he was right on the line, but I'm happy the call went for us. It was a lot of penalties in that game, not much cleanup by the Raiders or Broncos on penalties. So it's going to be interesting how both of them move forward, but with the Raiders as the only team to win in their division, they're sitting at first place, which no one probably expected.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are just, their offense kind of looks the same as last year, more of a check down.
Yep.
They didn't have any turnovers, though, which was definitely a positive coming out of last season, especially. But Russ Wilson, a lot of checkdowns to the running backs and the tight ends. And that might be because they were missing Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, big
but
absence.
Cortland Sutton, he only had 4 receptions, 32 yards. You'd think he'd have more than that, but he had the touchdown. So, but other than that, it was just kind of a mediocre day for the Broncos offense.
Yeah, real quick about Cortland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy being out could be one of the reasons why the offense looked weird. We won't know until he gets back in there. But I just would say I think Cortland Sutton is a really good receiver. I think he can be a sleeper receiver. I don't think he can be – he can be a number one, but I don't know if he's truly a number one. But he has some potential there, and I just kind of feel like the Broncos are slowly kind of giving up on him. Like they brought in Jeudy from a few years ago when we thought Sutton was going to be that number one guy. And now him and Jeudy are kind of battling between who's the real number one and who's the real number two. But I do think Sutton has a lot left to give. He has a lot in the tank. He's still fairly young. I believe he's 24, 25. So he should I think he's going to be okay. And I just think when Jeudy gets back, I think we'll really see what the offense is like. But for the most part, not the best showing you probably would want to see from especially a Sean Payton ran offense.
Especially with all the hype around him coming in, helping fix up Russ, and then but you see them going before when he's yelling at Russ like, "You're not kissing babies here. You don't need to make your image all that great."
Yeah. All right, we're going to jump into the next one. I would say one of the more interesting matchups. The Eagles and the Patriots decided to play each other on Sunday. Eagles did win 25-20, but Mac Jones looked pretty good. Erupted, 316, 3 touchdowns. The running back room was the negative for me, though, for the Patriots. Not only with Stevenson, but bringing in Zeke really didn't do anything. They combined for just a little over 60 yards, the both of them with no touchdowns. Kendrick Bourne came alive, though, for Mac Jones, scoring two of the touchdowns. And then my guy that I like and have a lot of praise for, Juju Smith-Schuster, was missing in action. So hopefully they get him in there. He was their acquisition. They practically swapped out Jacoby Myers. They got the same contract, 3 years, $33 million, kind of did a swap there with the Raiders in a way. But I'll leave it to you guys. Where do you want to go with this one?
I think Mac Jones only having 1 interception on 54 pass attempts with the 3 touchdowns and 30 yards is definitely an impressive feat for him, especially against a good Eagles defense, them being in the Super Bowl last year. But the running game, like you said, wasn't there, and I think that's mainly because of the good Eagles front 7. They definitely were stopping them there. Overall, it was a close game, and it was impressive by the Patriots to be able to be that close with the Eagles.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm surprised they hung on like that.
Yeah, I think a great acquisition for the Eagles was Jalen Carter.
Yep.
He's my pick for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And, a team that lost Javon Hargrave, who's one of the better defensive tackles, and being able to replace him with a rookie as good as Jalen Carter, I mean, I think that's huge for this Eagles defense. And I think that's a big reason why
He shouldn't
run
have,
game was nothing.
he shouldn't have been there, and the Eagles got a blessing. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But Jalen Carter is a phenomenal player, and I agree with you. I think he wins rookie defensive player of the year. What are your thoughts, Colin?
I mean, I did think Philly would actually win this game by a much bigger margin. I do know the New England did come back a little bit. They got it closer by making it a 25-20 loss instead of much bigger. But big showing for Mac Jones. It's been questioned since Brady's left. Is Mac Jones going to stay the guy with Belichick? He's never really big on the quarterbacks. But 3 touchdowns and only the 1 interception. It was a pick 6, but I don't think the fact that it was a pick 6 was entirely his fault. But yeah, when you throw the ball 54 times, that shows you don't really have much confidence in the run game, and they need to get the run game going. I don't think Zeke's obviously not going to be your starting standard back. He's going to be more of an in the red zone type back to vulture off the touchdowns right there, help you get the run game going down there. But it's going to be interesting for the Patriots. I don't think they're going to be that crazy good this year. I think they'll be solid. They'll get maybe 9, maybe 10 wins tops. That might get them as a playoff seed, but I don't think they're going to be nothing special.
Yeah, I have the Patriots actually last in the division, even with the Aaron Rodgers injury. I just think the Jets are a little better. The one thing I will say is for the Patriots, I agree, they do need to get the running back room going. They have if those guys were going, that's a solid room. Yeah. That's a better room than a good amount of teams. All right, we're gonna jump into the Rams and the Seahawks. I thought this would be closer just because of the division rivalry, but the Rams kind of in a way ran away with it a bit. They scored 30 on the Seahawks. The Seahawks only did 17. Geno Smith did not look great after getting that contract in the off season. He kind of had that big year last year, potentially a fluke year. Is it kind of a one-year wonder type year? We won't know. But to start the season, not very good. I will say for the Rams side, though, their young receivers, wide receivers, kind of a question mark going in for them because of Cooper Kupp injury and who's going to, is Van Jefferson ready to take on the workload while he's hurt? And we saw 2 guys in Tutu Atwell and Puka show out. They each had 119 yards apiece between both of them. They had 119. And then the other part I liked about it was Cam Akers was missing, but Kern Williams stepped up, their the 3rd round pick from a few seasons ago. He did only have 52 yards, but he did score twice, and they kind of trusted him. Stafford trusted him when they got a little bit closer. But for the most part, I mean, this is just one of those division games. They know the team better, but I just thought out of this game, I thought this game would be the one where it's like the Eagles-Patriots, where it's a 5-point differential, or even just by 1. But the Rams kind of ran away with this one. So, Colin, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I know going into this, I didn't entirely see it. I could kind of see it. There's a lot of hype going around Seattle, and like there's quite a few analysis out there saying that they could got to the playoffs last year. They could get to the playoffs again, but saying that they could get to the NFC Championship and further on. I don't see that, especially with how San Francisco's been. But with how the Rams have been going, with Cooper Kupp out, I did not see this much of an upset. Like, this to me is an upset.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle coming into the game were, to me, the better team. They had Geno Smith with a great season last year, comeback player of the year. I really thought he would build off of this and capitalize. Again, it's only week one. He had a so-so game, 16 for 26, only 112 on a touchdown. Stafford, though, 300 yards but no touchdown, but didn't really need it because they had the running game going. So Seattle losing to a division opponent like this is big, like a tough loss, but I don't think it's a need to panic button for them. But
Yeah, I thought Stafford had a great game.
mm-hmm.
I mean, there might have been a lot of people that thought he might have been on the decline or washed. I mean, he looked phenomenal.
That's me.
Yeah, so did I.
That's me.
I'm not going to lie. But even without Cup, I mean, it was no problem. He was firing on all cylinders. So.
Yeah, and I think the Rams secondary, missing Jalen Ramsey, still stepped up, stopping the Seattle pass game. Geno Smith didn't do much. DK Metcalf only had 3 receptions. Jackson Smith and Jibda, the hyped-up rookie, only had 3 receptions as well for only 13 yards. It was a bunch of short check-down passes for Seattle, and I think the Rams secondary did a very good job.
Yeah, DK Metcalf being held in check, especially without Jalen Ramsey now, was really surprising. He did have 47 yards in the score, but I was definitely expecting a over 100-yard game for him. And then we're going to jump into, I thought was the game of probably the week. There will be some speculation on that as we finish up here, as we have a couple more. But the Dolphins and the Chargers, a shootout for the ages.
Yes.
Dolphins did win 36-34. Justin Herbert did get sacked to cause a safety, so that's why it was a 2-point game.
Yep.
Tua going off for 466 yards, and Tyreek Hill going for 215 and 2 touchdowns. I would have told you guys there's no way. I don't think that's happening, but it did happen. And the Chargers defense, again, is one of the defenses where I think they have the ability to be good, but their signings and all the money they're throwing at it's not working. The Khalil Mack trade didn't work out. I mean, I don't understand what's going on with the Chargers defense. And the other thing on top of that is, depending on where the Chargers go this season, I think, this is probably the last year. If they don't make noise, you show Brandon Staley the door. I think he should have probably got the door last season. That's just me. I'm not a fan of him at all. I don't think he's a good coach. But just with the way the roster's constructed, Herbert, Eckler, Keenan Allen's still hanging on, he's older. Mike Williams is starting to get rid of that injury bug. They drafted Quentin Johnson from TCU. TCU. So that's a third weapon. The tight end room is a little weird. Gerald Everett's there, but he's not, a top-tier guy. Yeah. But I think they have a window, but I think it could close, and I think that's due to Brandon Staley's coaching. And so I'll leave it to you guys where you guys stand with that.
I'd like to go towards the debate that's been going on for 2 years, Herbert versus Tua, who's been the better quarterback. And Tua definitely played better than Herbert this game, especially after last year when they played each other and Herbert came out as the better quarterback, and everyone seemed to have settled the debate. But Tua might be getting above that pedestal over Herbert, and especially with Tyreek Hill at receiver. I mean, he could be almost an MVP candidate as a receiver.
Oh, he should be. If his season goes the way it goes, he should be in that conversation. And then real quick, and I'll let Drew talk, I just want to say I'm a big Tua guy, but I do like Herbert. I think that's just a matchup, though. It's still, I think, a little early to tell. But I think that's a debate that's going to keep going on for years, is between Herbert and Tua. There's a couple other ones we'll talk about with our matchup later, but I do think that conversation has the potential to go on for years, because right away it looked like Herbert, but now, since Tua got Tyreek Hill, I mean, he's a different man compared to what he had before. So go ahead, Drew, what do you got to say?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I do think that was Tua's best game by a long shot. He looked great. All his throws up the middle, they were perfect placed balls. I don't know if he's better than Herbert, though. I think if you switch, their positions, and you give Herbert someone like Tyreek Hill, I think
that would be interesting.
That'd be a game changer.
Yeah,
so
that's real interesting.
I still think Herbert has him by a lot, but I've never been the biggest Tua fan, but if he plays like this moving forward, he's gonna make me regret my words real quick.
Tua definitely has the better weapons, at least in the two receivers. I've never understood the hype of Keenan Allen. Never understood it. I didn't think he's been that great of a receiver. I think he's been a fantasy receiver. He'll get you the fantasy points. I never thought he was a top 5 receiver in the league. I've almost never seen it. He's an aggressive receiver. He's he's a good receiver, but he's not top 5 in what I've seen. And Tua's got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill with that speed, it's really hard for defenses to match that. And honestly, when he was on the Chiefs and then left to the Dolphins, I wasn't thinking he'd still be all that. I thought, okay, he's getting his money. He's going to be a good receiver. He's not going to put up crazy numbers, but he's still putting up good numbers. And he's making Tua look really good. Tua's a good quarterback, but Tyreek is helping make him look good as well. Not saying that's a bad thing, though. You want your receivers to make you look good. You want the quarterback to make your receivers look good. So Dolphins are going to make some noise this year, I really think. I think, especially with Rodgers going out, the hype for Jets going in the toilet, I think this is a chance for the Dolphins to take advantage and get this division.
Yeah, the Jets matchup is coming up soon, and that'll be our last one we talk about. We're going to go to a game in the NFC North, a division battle for what could possibly be one of the most open divisions in football. Yep. We've talked about a few other ones, but with Rodgers now leaving Green Bay for the Jets, we'll talk about that more at the end. Jordan Love kind of decided to show up. I was a big fan of him coming out of college. I saw the Packers draft him in that first round in 2020 with all those receivers when they needed one, when Rodgers was still there, and I thought two things. Why? And I was not happy. Jordan Love is a great talent, and he really showed that. Romeo Doubs was his main guy, which he started developing the preseason. He had 2 touchdowns. Not too much big yardage. He didn't have any guys go over 100. Christian Watson was out too. That's another big key, a deep threat. Aaron Jones is just, for a veteran running back, he's got to be one of the most solid guys. Yes. For a veteran running back, he's got to be one of the most solid. Yes. Just he's always doing something on the receiving end and, of course, running. So he scored and made some noise. Going off the Bears, they just look the same. I mean, they're just the same old Bears they've been. They spend all this money on these players, not really showing anything so far. The DJ Moore acquisition when they traded the first-round pick, I thought that was really good. Like the acquisition, all the compensation they got. But I'm expecting DJ Moore to really be that guy, especially for Justin Fields. And he just kind of disappointed a little bit in that first game. I think I was overhyping him a little too much. I wanted him on a lot of my fantasy boards as well. So I think just him and Fields need to build chemistry just like he did with Darnell Mooney. I know he didn't really do too much, but, that's kind of goes back to me for the Lamar Marquise Brown, that tight connection. We'll just have to wait and see, but right now it's anyone's division in the NFC North, and I'll kick it to you guys. What do you think about this game?
I think Fields, the hype going around him entering this season, he's got DJ Moore, he still has Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet at tight end, and then their running back room is still pretty solid with Khalil Herbert. And he just looked like the same old Fields as just like a runner and a decent passer. He had that pretty horrible interception he threw right to him. But granted, DJ Moore was getting locked up by Jair Alexander almost the entire game.
That dude's a top corner. Yeah. Hands down.
But overall, for the Bears offense, they just need to improve and definitely need to assess themselves after this game.
I agree.
Yeah, I would definitely put emphasis on their O-line. I do get that Justin Fields, I'm not the biggest fan on him either, and I know he didn't play the best game, but with the O-line like that, you can't really expect anybody to play that great. So, you got to see them improve if you really are a believer in this Bears team.
Again, with him, people were saying he could be MVP runner, possibly a dark horse. I was seeing some of those. I didn't get that at all. I was like, what are you seeing from the Bears to make him think that he'd be a MVP candidate? He's athletic. He's a good player. It's just he needs to apply it better on the field and needs to stop throwing. Obviously, that was a bad interception by him.
Right to him.
That wasn't. I mean, again, we don't know. We're not on the field. That could have been a miscommunication. He could have been anticipating the receiver going across. I only saw the highlight of that. I didn't watch the game. But new owner, same results for the Bears. Aaron Rodgers, previous owner of them. Now Love possibly taking in the team as a new owner.
Taking the reins.
Great start for him. 300 yards, 245, no interceptions. That's a great start for a quarterback after sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. And that could show right there the Packers, you could be in good hands with this guy. And you had it with Favre, you had Rodgers coming in, sitting behind Favre, and now you got Jordan Love coming in, sitting behind Rodgers. It could be a good thing for Green Bay. Again, it's week 1. Can't infer too much, but so far I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Packers.
I have a lot to say about Fields, but we're going to move on because we got to finish up here. The one thing I will say about him, and then we are going to move on. I think Fields has all the tools to be a great quarterback. I just think he's on the wrong team, and I'm going to leave it at that. So we're going to go into our next game. I don't think there's really too much to talk about for a particular team, but it was the Cowboys and Giants Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys decimated them 40-0. That defense is just showing why it's a top tier, probably the best defense in the league. Again,
Defense.
you can,
That's what
however you decide to do it, your personal preference between them and the Niners, those are the top 2 defenses. Either order's fine with me. Dak was mid, not too surprising. He's Dak. I don't really have too
He
much to
didn't
say
lose the
about
game
him.
for them.
Exactly.
That's all you can really
Yeah.
expect when you have a good defense like that.
Yeah, Pollard had a quietly good game, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's that lead back now after Zeke. He got the contract even though he got hurt last season. I think he's solid. I do think maybe they need another running back as a complimentary or get that real workhorse, but right now they're definitely not the worst room by any means. The Giants side, I think that team is just Saquon, Darren Waller sometimes. Darren
he's
Waller
healthy.
Darren Waller when he's
healthy.
healthy, but the rest of the team is just a straight bag of chips. I mean, there's nobody there. I don't think Daniel Jones is worth any of the money. I'm not a fan of him. I don't think he's that great of a quarterback. I think the Giants probably should have moved on from him when they had the chance a couple years ago. But it's only week 1. Obviously, there's some room to improve and bounce back, but I'll open the floor to you guys about this game. What do you guys want to point out?
I mean, defense.
Yeah.
Defense.
Yeah.
Defense.
Yeah.
That's all you really can say. I mean, what else is there? When your defense can capitalize on a blocked field goal for a touchdown and a pick 6, it's really hard to come back from. And your offense, again, when your offense doesn't lose the game for you, when your defense gives you these opportunities, your offense can still capitalize. You said Pollard had the 2 touchdowns. Dak, again, not a crazy night, but he didn't lose the game for them.
Exactly.
And when you're up 40, it's kind of hard to lose the game like
Yeah.
that. But when you give it in a position, when your defense puts you in a position to succeed like this, you're going to do well as long as you don't blow it. And they didn't blow it.
Yeah, for the Giants, I mean, their O-line just blew it against the Cowboys front 7. I mean, I feel like every time Daniel Jones dropped back to pass, he had like 2 seconds to throw. And he's not good under pressure. We know that. He threw 2 picks. One of them was a low mediocre, but the other one was a pick 6, which is obviously not good for their offense. But their running game was all right for playing the Dallas defense. I mean, Saquon had some good runs. He was averaging 4 yards a carry. And then Matt Breida got the same amount of carries for some reason. I think that's just because at the end, not Matt Breida. Daniel Jones had more carries than Barkley just because he was escaping that.
Yeah, just
Cowboys
scrambling,
pressure.
running for his life.
But other than that, I mean, their receivers just got to get open more. I know it's the Dallas secondary with the new acquisition of Stephon Gilmore, and they still have Trayvon Diggs.
Yep.
But the Giants need to do more than that. I mean, they were in the playoffs last year. You can't lose 40-0 on a Sunday night football game.
Not in your stadium, not an opening night.
Yeah, I got nothing to say. I checked my phone.
I mean-
I was driving home. I was gonna ask what the score was. I asked Siri. Didn't even bother turning it on.
I stopped watching at halftime because I'm like, these are 2 teams I'm not a big fan of,
Yeah.
and it's a blowout. Ain't that entertaining to watch unless you're a Cowboys fan.
All right, we're going to go to our last game that we're going to talk about. It was just last night, the Monday night game, the Jets and the Bills. I would say one of the craziest opening Monday nights in
One of the
a
craziest
while,
I've seen,
and
man.
I mean a while. We'll just start with the main thing. Aaron Rodgers only playing 3 snaps and then getting hurt. It did end up being his Achilles. He is done for the season. So the Jets did win this game, 22-16, but going forward, still some question marks. Do you trust Zach Wilson? Do you go knock on the door of a team after week 2 or 3 that might be willing to kind of tank? Maybe Kirk Cousins, maybe somebody else. I can't really think of anybody else quarterback-wise. You never know. But for the most part, yeah, the Jets are kind of a question mark. Breece Hall, there's no doubt he's the RB1 there.
Yep.
The Dalvin Cook going over there, I was like most people where the carries might have gone away. And, I kind of, in the back of my mind, because Breece Hall's coming off the injury,
Yeah.
maybe Dalvin be that number 1 for a bit and kind of take the job. But there's no more talk and debate. Breece Hall needs to be and should be the running back 1, and he proved that last night. Going into OT, though, Jets did run back the 65-yard punt to win the game. That was huge. I read a report, too, that the guy that ran the punt back just made the roster the week before.
Yeah.
So good for him and a good moment for him. We're going to go to the Bills side real quick, though, and I'll leave it to you guys to end the show. Josh Allen did throw 3 picks to the same corner, Whitehead on the Jets. The 3 picks are the main thing here. However, Diggs did show why he is a top 5 receiver. Might even take that leap like we kind of talked about off camera. The Bills, I just think, need to bounce back from this, but at the same time, you don't want that Madden curse to kind of take the effect of Josh Allen. And you also kind of wonder now, like, how much, what am I trying to say? I guess I'm trying to say, like, I think we need to start being a little harder on Josh Allen. I think we kind of need to start giving him the benefit of the doubt, because there's times where he looks like him and Mahomes can battle it out, and there's times where he looks like just absolute mediocre.
Yep.
And it showed last night. So, last one, I'll leave it to you guys. Take the floor.
I think there's times Josh Allen looks like he's competing with Mahomes, like you said, but there's also times where those 3 interceptions, he's looking like Zach Wilson out there from last season.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just throwing it up into double coverage to the same guy every time. Jordan Whitehead got that $250,000 incentive just for the 3 interceptions.
Good for him.
And then, other than that, I mean, Stephon Diggs had a really good game. Like you said, he's definitely a top 5 receiver. But other than that, their receiving core is kind of mediocre. They have the new tight end, Dalton Kincaid. He's a rookie.
Yeah,
I was
like
really
him.
hyped on him. He only had 4 receptions, though. I think they need to get him more involved in the receiving game. And then their running game was all right. I mean, James Cook, he had some good runs, but they definitely need to balance out the offense more and reevaluate how they did against the Jets.
Buffalo's running back room, for as long as I've been really watching football and paying attention, has just been so weird since they let Marshawn go or they traded him. I don't know how that worked, but they just can't. I don't know why they just can't figure out. They have Cook and Damian Harris, who came up from the Patriots, and I thought that would be a cool duo, but didn't really show in week 1. But obviously a lot of time left. Drew, what do you got to say about this one?
I think the biggest problem with Josh Allen as of right now is that he's just missing Dable. When he was their offensive coordinator in, I think, 2021 season, I mean, he just looked like a completely different player.
That was his best year so far.
Yeah.
Now it's just looking horrible, and I think he just gotta try to find some way to go back to his former self. And as for the Jets, if I'm their GM, I'm calling up the Commanders and I'm asking them for Jacoby Brissett.
That's
I'm
a
seeing
good
if he's
name.
open,
Yeah,
because I think he was serviceable for the Browns last year,
I agree. I
And-
forgot about him. Yeah,
and I think he could be good enough for the Jets.
I agree.
There's several calls the Jets could make. They've been reaching out to quite a few of the old veteran quarterbacks, obviously Wentz and Nick Foles. This is far out there, because I know they were saying there was reports for the Niners, if they would have won the NFC Championship, Phillip Rivers would have came out of retirement to play with them. This is my long shot. I think Phillip Rivers may come back for that. That's a long shot. I know it's a, but that's my
interesting.
sleeper
Yeah, that is interesting.
high register pick. But Buffalo, you need to win this game when that stadium, the air was sucked out of that stadium when Rodgers went down. It died, and you have to take advantage of that. But when you throw 3 interceptions, you should lose the damn game. You can't win a game throwing 3 picks, and that's a good Jets defense. That's a solid Jets defense.
That's a great Jets
they
defense. Yeah.
have great defensive linemen with Quinn Williams, and it's a division game. That's a must-win for a whole division. This is a tough division going into it. May not be quite as tough now with Rodgers out, and we don't know how that could have been for the Jets. We'll never know. Might be one of the biggest what-ifs in Jets history, maybe NFL history. But there's really all you got to say is Josh Allen did not do good, and yes, we need to be a little more critical on him. I do like Josh Allen, but I'm saying he's the Phillip Rivers of this generation of quarterbacks. He's good, but can he win the game? Can he get you there? That's the thing. It's not even can you win the game. Can you even get there?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh Allen just needs a little more criticism, but overall, I mean, I do think Buffalo is a good team, so I'm sure they will bounce back. So that is going to be it for us today here on the Solana College Sports Network. This was an edition of the Tuesday Swoop. We went over week 1 in the NFL, and we will be back to do another show sometime next week. Probably talk about week 2 or some other sports topics. We'll figure something out, but we're going to be here all semester. Thank you for joining me. My name was Blake Molina, Drew Kirby, Holden Beers, and Collin Samansky signing off. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you next time.